بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه وبعد. So we'll begin today then with the dirasa itself of Bulugh al-Maram after months of dealing with the muqaddimat in usul al-fiqh and in mustalah al-hadith and qawaid fiqhiyya and maqasid shar'iyya. We begin bi'idhnillah in today's session with the study of the book itself, and of course the dirasa and our study will revolve around the sharh of Sheikh Abdullah Bassam, Tawdih al-Ahkam. And so what we'll do in this session then, we'll begin first and foremost with a look at the tarjama of the biography, a brief biography of Al-Imam Hafiz, and then the muqaddimah and the introduction to his book, and then we'll get at least into, bi'idhnillah, the first hadith.
The author's biography. The full name of the famous Imam Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar Al-Asqalani is Abu Fadl Shihabuddin Ahmad ibn Ali ibn Muhammad ibn Ahmad Al-Kinani Al-Shafi'i. Ibn Hajar Al-Asqalani was born on the 10th of Sha'ban 773 Hijri in Egypt, where he grew up also. He memorized the Quran at the age of 9 years. He also memorized Al-Hawi, the book Mukhtasar of Ibn Hajib, and other books. He traveled to Mecca and listened to the teaching of its ulama. He admired the knowledge of hadith and began to acquire it from the great sheikhs in Hijaz, Sham, Egypt, and stayed with Zayn al-Iraqi for 10 years. He also studied under Al-Balqini, Ibn Mulaqin, and others. Many eminent sheikhs of his time approved of his knowledge and allowed him to give religious verdicts. He had learned the two sources.
As far as Hafiz is concerned then, of course he is the Imam Al-Allam Al-Hafiz Abu Al-Fadl Ahmad ibn Ali ibn Muhammad ibn Hajar Al-Asqalani. Al-Asqalani is a nisbah, and it is his attribution to his tribe, and it is similarly a region, since Sheikh Sheikh Abdullah, he mentions here Madinatun min a'mal Palestine qurb Gaza, that is, it is a region in the place or in the area of Palestine, which indicates that his origins return and stem back to that region. And so he was born in Egypt, and he was born in the year 773. Not long after he was born, his mother passed away at the age of 3, and approximately a year or so later his father passed away. And so he was an orphan from a relatively early age. After he became an orphan, he was taken, or he took to the memorization of the Quran. Since some mention that the death of his father was later than a year later, that is mentioned in some of the statements of Ahl al-Ilm, while others hold that his father passed away a number of years later. But from the age of 5, he began, and he took to memorizing the Quran, and he memorized the Quran by the time he was 9 years old. And it was said that his memory was ajib, in that he memorized the Quran in totality early, in a short period of time. But his muraja'a and him memorizing and learning modes of recitation and what have you took a slightly longer period. But by the time he was 12 years old, he led Salah, he led Qiyam in the Haram al-Makki at the age of 12. In Makkah.
He had learned the two sources from Al-Izz ibn Jama'a and the language from Al-Majd al-Fayruzabadi.
Al-Izz ibn Jama'a was his sheikh, was one of his shuyukh. He had a number of shuyukh from the people of knowledge of his time. At the head of them, the likes of Al-Imam ibn Mulaqin, who was from his shuyukh and who taught him hadith and other than that. Similarly, he had from his teachers the likes of Ibn Hisham, the great alim of al-Lugha al-Arabiya. Ibn Hisham was from the shuyukh of Al-Imam Hafiz ibn Hajar. From them, and from possibly the one that had the greatest effect upon him in terms of him turning towards the ulum al-hadithiyya and the sciences of hadith, is Al-Imam al-Iraqi. Al-Imam al-Iraqi was likewise from the shuyukh and the teachers of Hafiz ibn Hajar. Likewise in Lugha, Al-Imam Fayruz Abadi.
The Arabic from Al-Amari, literature and poetry from Al-Badr al-Mushtaki, and writing from a group of professors. He also recited some parts of the Quran in all 7 styles of recitation before Tanuhi. He occupied himself with promotion of knowledge of hadith, so he dwelt in its study, teaching, writing and giving fatwa. He also taught tafsir, hadith, fiqh, and preached at many places like Al-Azhar, Jami', Amr and others.
And it is said that he traveled to over 50 cities. From the cities that had in them the people of knowledge and ilm, that he traveled to over 50 cities in the pursuit of ilm. And of course, in terms of the regions that he traveled to the Haramain, to the region of Hijaz, the region of Dimashq, Sham. He traveled, and of course he took from the scholars of his region in Egypt and in Masr. He traveled likewise to Yemen, took from the ulama of Yemen. And so he, in terms of al-rihla, and traveling for the purpose of seeking knowledge, which was from the great characteristics of the people of ilm of the past, then he followed suit and traveled ikhwan to many regions seeking the knowledge ikhwan of the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, particularly ilm al-hadith.
He also dictated to his students from his memory. Many highly educated people and distinguished scholars traveled to him to acquire from his vast knowledge. Ibn Hajar authored more than 150 books, most of them being in the studies of hadith, which flourished during his lifetime, and the kings and princes exchanged them as gifts.
Many of his students, from them Al-Imam al-Sakhawi, would mention that he would narrate, he would have jalasat of imla, and he would narrate riwayat, for lengthy periods of time, narrations from his hifz, from his memory. And on the basis of his hifz and him being well known for his memory and memorization, he was given the laqab al-Hafiz. Even though with Ahl al-Hadith, the Huffaz, or the era of the Huffaz, ended a number of years prior to that, in fact centuries before. And so Hafiz ibn Hajar, though he was mutaakhir, though he was born at a later period, he was resemblant to the earlier scholars of hadith in terms of memorization, precision, and many of the sciences related to seeking knowledge. It was said similarly that he was an extremely fast reader, to the extent that he read Sahih Muslim in 2 days. Sahih Muslim in 2 days now.
His book most worthy of mentioning is Fathul Bari, the commentary of Sahih Bukhari, which he started in the beginning of 817 Hijri, after finishing its introductory part in 813 Hijri, and completed the whole commentary in Rajab 842 Hijri. After the completion of the commentary, he had a gathering attended by the Muslim dignitaries and spent 500 dinar on it. Then some kings requested it and paid 300 dinar. Ibn Hajar became the Qadi of Egypt and then Sham, and was also added to his then Sham was also added to his jurisdiction, which he held for more than 21 years.
Which was one of the positions that he held, that he eventually became a Qadi and a Mufti, as he was similarly given to Al-Khitaba, that is, he was the Khatib of a number of the major masajid in Egypt, Al-Jami' Al-Azhar. For example, he was the Khatib in Al-Jami' Al-Azhar. Similarly, Jami' of Amr ibn al-As in Qahira in Egypt, he was the Khatib and the one that was given, or that gave sermon within those masajid. In terms of his authorships, then indeed there are many, numbering more than 250 authorships, and not ikhwan, small books, large works. Anyone who has seen مثلا Fath al-Bari will know that it is numerous in terms of its volume. The likes of Tahdhib al-Tahdhib, the work that he did around the affair of Rijal and servicing the book of Al-Hafiz Al-Mizzi, Tahdhib al-Kamal, Al-Isaba fi Tamyiz al-Sahaba, kutub indicating his vast knowledge in hadith and Rijal and various other sciences now.
He was against holding the office of the Qadi at first until the Sultan assigned to him a special case. Then he accepted to represent Al-Balqini when he begged him very much to preside for him as Qadi. Then he presided for others until he was assigned to the office of Chief Qadi on the 12th of Muharram 827 Hijri. He then left but had to take the office of the Chief Qadi 7 times until he left it finally in 852 Hijri, which is the year in which he died. As concerns his personality,
and so he continued to be a Qadi up until the time that he passed away. No.
As concerning his personality, Al-Asqalani was humble, tolerant, patient and enduring. He was also described as being steadfast, prudent, aesthetic, selfless, generous, charitable, and a person praying and fasting voluntarily.
And his students would mention that concerning him, that he would stand with them, a person would ask questions, and he would remain with them until they finished asking. And he would ask about his students. Imam al-Sakhawi mentioned that there was not a day that passed except that he used to ask my father about me, to the extent that my father loved me more because of him asking. No.
On the other hand, he was said to be used to making light jokes and telling of humorous anecdotes. He also had good manners in dealing with all the imams of the earlier generations and later generations, and with all those who sat with him, whether old or young. Ibn Hajar died after the Isha prayer on Saturday, the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, 852. May Allah reward him generously.